Isn't she lovely? Isn't she wonderful? Isn't she precious? Less than 1 minute old. I never thought the love would be making one as lovely as she. But isn't she lovely? Made from love. Isn't she pretty? Truly the angel's best. Boy, I'm so happy you have been heaven blessed. I can't believe what God has done through us. He's giving life to one. But isn't she lovely? Made from love. I can't believe what God has done through us. He's giving life to one. But isn't she lovely? Made from love.
All right, excellent. Well, before we dive into the podcast, I thought it would be fun if we had a comedian show up and tell us a few jokes. Everyone give it up for my very good friend, 4-time guest on the podcast? Yeah, 4-time guest on the podcast, one of my favorite people in Austin, Texas. Give it up for Isac Kane Brown.
Well, howdy, guys. Thanks for coming out. I'll be honest with you. This is new style of jokes for me. I'm usually a late night guy, if you catch my drift on that one. So I'm just going to do a couple little funny ones and see if you guys like them. And if they don't, I will be asking my therapist to up my Zoloft prescription. So I was telling my buddy the other day that I am a glutton for cheesecake. And he's like, gluttony is a cardinal sin. And I was like, well, good thing I'm not a bird. One dude winced at that physically. Yeah, but if I was a bird, I don't think I'd ever be a crow. I hate crows. I don't like crows at all. I don't like them because they're the ones that made all those racist laws. Yeah, how we rate that? 7 out of 10? No? Drop it. I have been noticing, though, everybody on the news is talking about the bird flu. Bird flu this, bird flu that. It's like, yeah, man, that's what they do. I don't know if you guys know this. Fun fact, birds have hollow bones because they do not have the love of Jesus Christ. Hey, you didn't like that one? That's fair, man. I don't like any of these. I was going to my doctor the other day, and he told me I had bad cuticles. He's like, your cuticles are really bad, which would confuse me because I'm clearly not an office. Yeah, that one, I knew right in that one that wasn't going to go well. Oh, man. You guys are probably not going to like these next two. They're not as good as I thought they would be. I was talking to a dude the other day, and he said, I have a problem chain smoking. He's like, I'm a really big chain smoker. And I was like, how, man? Those things are so heavy. How do you get them? Oh, I should have stayed in college, you know? All right, we'll do one more, and I'll save you guys the embarrassment of these jokes that I got off the inside of a fortune cookie. All right. Hold on, I got to read this one. It's brand new. No, there we go. Oh, actually, do you guys know Captain Crunch? Yeah. Captain Crunch probably made a horrible soldier, if you think about it. Like, Captain, we're surrounded. What should we do? He's like, make the roof of their mouth really sore. All right, that's my time. Thank you, guys.
That was fun. He did good. Good job, Isaac. Give it up one more time for Isac Kane Brown. So real quick, before I bring up today's guest, I wanted to tell you guys sort of the origin story of the podcast and how we all came to be here today. And before I jump into this story, I want everyone to think about someone in your life that is age 24 years or younger. Could be a son, a daughter, a niece, a nephew, a colleague, a classmate, a coworker, someone that means a lot to you. And once you have that person selected and at the forefront of your mind, do me a favor and raise your hand. We're getting there. We're getting there. Thomas, do you have someone in mind? No. Stephanie, who are you thinking about today, if you don't mind me asking? You're thinking about Jackson? Who are you thinking about? Yeah. Your brother, how old is he? What's his name? Nathan. I haven't met Nathan yet. All right, so with that in mind, before I jump into the story, we're all gonna do 3 sets of 4, 7, 8 breathing just to sort of get ourselves in the right mood for this story. Does anyone know what this is? Essentially, you're gonna inhale for 4 seconds, you're gonna hold it for 7, and then you're gonna breathe out for 8, and we're gonna do this 3 times, and then we're gonna jump into the story. Are you ready? All right, so everyone keeping this person at the forefront of your mind, close your eyes for this too. We're gonna inhale for 4, hold it for 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, breathe out for 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to do it one more time. Breathe in for 4. Hold it for 7. And breathe out for 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. So for this next part, I'm not bringing it up to scare anyone. I'm not bringing it up to depress anyone. But because after doing 160 episodes of David's Saturday Night Sit Back, I've found that silence is far more dangerous than conversation. There is a monster among us in our culture, and what makes him terrifying isn't how loud he is, it's how quiet. He doesn't attack all at once. He isolates. He convinces people they're alone. He slowly blocks them from adding fuel to their internal fire until one day that flame feels too weak to protect itself. And the age group that this monster haunts, that keeps me up at night, that has kept me up these last 3 years, are those who are 24 years old and younger. And that's where today's first story begins. So back in July of 2022, I was working out at a gym I used to work out called California Family Fitness, and I saw one of my old coworkers named Norbert, and he came up to me and he said, "David, what's new with you?" And my initial reaction was to look at him and say, absolutely nothing. But at that moment, I realized that I had become the epitome of the phrase that most people die at 25 but aren't buried until they're 75. My life had become very much wake up, go to work, go to the gym, go home, go to bed, repeat. And so out of nowhere, I said, "Norbert, I'm moving to Austin, Texas. I'm starting a podcast." And he said, "What?" I said, "I'm moving to Austin, Texas. I'm starting a podcast." And he said, "What's it going to be about?" And I said, "I have no idea." He says, "Well, are you going to have a co-host or are you going to interview people? Like, what's the format going to be?" I said, "I'm not sure yet." He said, "Who's your target audience going to be?" I said, "I have no idea." And he sort of cocked his head to the side and raised an eyebrow. And he said, "You're not going to do that." And I don't know if you guys have had that experience of having someone tell you that you're not going to do something or you can't do something, but it was the exact motivation I needed. And over the next 5 months, I sold, gave away, or threw away every single one of my possessions. I put the dog in the passenger seat of my car, and I drove out to Austin, Texas on December 26, 2022. On February 24th, we recorded the first episode. A friend of mine from California came out to record it with me, and we actually came here. He's a big book nerd, and he wanted to see the library. And I remember when we walked in this room, I told him that one day I'm going to do a live podcast, and this is the room that it's going to be in. And here we are 3 years later actually doing it. On April 1st, 2023, the podcast went live, and I made myself a promise that I would record at minimum 21 episodes. Did you guys know of 90% of podcasts, most of them stop recording, they give up, they shut the program down. Guess at what episode? Start throwing numbers out there. 4, you're close. 20, you're close. 4, 3, you've heard this before, haven't you? Yep. So 90% of podcasts stop recording at episode 3. Of the 10% that are left, another 90% stop recording at another threshold. Guess what episode number that is? A little bit higher than 7, a little bit higher than 10. You're so close, it's 20. So I made myself a promise that I would record at least 21 episodes, and if I answered some of the questions such as who's the target audience, what do I want to talk about, what is this whole thing going to turn into, I would keep going. And if I didn't answer those questions, then I'd reassess and maybe move back to California. Well, around episode 12, I had an entrepreneur on the show, and his name is Austin Abbott. And Austin came on, and he flipped the script on me, and he started asking me questions, and he got me to tell the story of the last time that I talked to my dad 15 years ago that ended in him calling the police on me, and we haven't talked since. This is a story that doesn't come up very often, and I had not told it in a very long time. And after Austin left that night, over the next 72 hours, I would just spontaneously burst into tears in the middle of job interviews, in the middle of meetings. It just opened up a wound that I had thought I had healed from, but potentially I didn't. I wasn't going to release the episode because I thought this is too much and I don't really want my business out there. But after I've had on people like Jackson and Stephanie and Ben and Alan and you guys and Ryan and Thomas and Dalton, you guys have been so courageous with your own stories. I thought I would be a hypocrite if I wouldn't put mine out there. So I released the episode. What was really interesting was during these first 20 episodes, when I say nobody was listening, I mean that literally. No one, not even my mother, was hitting play on these episodes. And I always thought that when and if a day came that this podcast went viral, it might be a day when someone like Alan comes on and he tells his story about his journey to recovery and entrepreneurship. When my episode went out, I got a push notification from the website that hosts the platform that over 10,000 people listened to that episode. My story was one of the first ones that went viral, and I thought this isn't how this was supposed to happen, but it's what happened. It did. About 2 weeks after the podcast came out, I'm working out in the gym, I'm doing leg day, I finish this heavy set of squats, and I look in the mirror, and there's a kid walking right at me, or at least I thought maybe he was. I look down, take another breath, I look up in the mirror, he's still walking directly at me, he's making eye contact with me through the mirror, he takes his headphones out, I took mine out, I extend my hand, and he said, "We have something in common." And I said, "Yeah, what's that?" He says, "We both have a monster in our family. For you, it's your dad. For me, it's my mom." And I asked him if we could take a couple laps around the parking lot to tell me his story. And he told me that after all the hell that his mom put their family through, that at the young age of 16 years old, he attempted to take his own life. This story shocked me. To be so young and think that there's no other way, there's no other option except to end things. So we finished our workout. I got his story, exchanged numbers. He's doing really good. Fast forward to today, he's actually serving in the military and he's doing amazing. But that night, I jumped in my car and I raced home. ran up the stairs, threw open the door, opened my laptop, and I did a quick search wondering if there is even going to be any data around this. And I searched how many kids in the United States on an annual basis try to take their own life. And in 2021, according to the Center for Disease Control, 6,529 kids, as young as 8, as old as 24, took their own life. And it was at that moment that I knew exactly what DSNSB is going to become. It's the message that every single one of my guests has got from me when I've slid into your DMs on Instagram or LinkedIn, that we tell stories about things that we've experienced or accomplished with the hope that by the end of each episode, the internal fire within the audience is burning a little bit brighter. And my end game for this podcast is that one day I'm going to have thousands of emails that from the audience that are going to read something like this. David, I was on my way home from my football practice, and I knew that me and my dad were probably going to get into a fight, as that's normally what happens. I got home, and sure enough, we had one of the biggest brawls that we've ever had, and at that point, I just had enough, and I didn't see the point of living anymore. So I ran out to the middle of my family's ranch with my cell phone in one hand and a knife in the other. I sank to my knees in the middle of this field, and I looked up at the moon, and for about 2 hours, debated taking my own life. And as I sat there, I thought, if the universe would just give me some sort of sign, anything at all, that there's something to do other than to end things here in this moment, I'll wait. For some reason, I put down my knife, I opened my phone, I turned on YouTube, and there is a 60-second short of David's Saturday Night Sit Back. And you were talking with Jackson, you're talking with Stephanie, you're talking with Thomas or Ryan or Ben or Alan or Amaya or Ambrian. And there was something about that 60-second short where that story just hit me. So I clicked over to the full episode, and that night, I decided to wait after listening to that episode. That was 3 years ago, and this is what my life looks like now. I've released the song, I've written the poem, I took the stage, I had my kid, I went to college, I got the job. This is what my life looks like now as a result of the stories on your podcast. So to everyone that is here today and is supporting this thing, it means the absolute world to me, because I've started to have these conversations. And that kid on the ranch is a real guy. And my life has never felt more full than when people come to me and they tell me these stories of how these episodes are changing their lives. So that is the end game for the podcast. And to everyone here that has been on the show or will be on the show, there's a couple of you that are playing hard to get, but I'm going to keep working on you. Thank you guys so much. This podcast means the world to me, and the relationships that I've built through this thing also mean the world to me. So thank you everyone so much for being a part of this. And with that being said, it's time to introduce you to today's guest. You guys ready to get this thing started? Let's hit that intro music. Picture being 18 years old. You've done everything right. You've worked hard, you followed the plan, you've been the athlete, the good son, the disciplined one. And now you leave home. New city, new expectations, new identity, and suddenly the question isn't what have you done, it's who are you when no one knows your story. Tonight, we're not sitting down with a resume. We're not sitting down with a LinkedIn profile. We're sitting down with someone who has had to wrestle with identity, with pride, with faith, with performance, with the pressure to be the guy. He grew up in Dallas, the son of 2 journalists, raised Catholic, varsity football player, Columbia University psychology major, a man who has played in Ivy League stadiums and still prays as he gets out of bed. He's someone that once learned to show frustration before anyone else could criticize him. Someone who had to unlearn talking down to himself. Someone who believes consistency matters more than applause. And he's still figuring it out, just like the rest of us. Tonight isn't about titles, it's about perspective. It's about what happens when ambition meets humility and what it looks like to grow without losing yourself. Everyone, please give a huge round of applause for the man brave enough to take the stage with me, Jack Maverick Lee Ertz. Welcome to your second episode on David's Saturday Night Sitback. How do you feel?
I feel pretty good. Can you guys hear me? I can't hear myself very well. Oh, no, you're perfect.
So let me ask you a selfish question to kick this thing off. Do you feel like your perspective and what you're doing here today has changed at all? Because no guest has heard why this podcast exists. People sort of just come on.
No, it's a great question. I would say, when you first reached out to me, it was a leap of faith. I didn't quite know who you were, what your goal was, but the fact that I had some random guy sending me a video of himself, instead of just like text or voice memos. If you guys text David, you guys know that he's huge on the voice to text. Like he'll send the voice memos, but I knew that he was genuine, and I could actually feel that through the conversation. So to hear the true reason of why you do what you do, it just adds more fuel to the fire, because I already had a feeling, of that you were doing this for a bigger reason, but to actually shed light on that is, just astronomical in terms of, why I'm here. And I mean, it really helps me know that, I feel like I'm doing a good thing on behalf of the amazing thing you're doing.
Excellent. By the way, I got 6 cartons of Zins on my way here today. Does anyone need some nicotine? Citrus, cinnamon, vinegar, any of it? Frank and Isaac, can you toss this to those two?
You get a Zin.
Anyone else need a Zin? No. I've been making this joke recently that I am walking anxiety disordered, harnessed for productivity and powered by nicotine and caffeine. So that is who I am. Who are you?
Man, I'm just a dude. just a guy. I would say I identify with my name, which was given to me by my parents, but who I become is what people remember me as. And, as he said, my dad calls me Maverick, my mom calls me Jack, and, a lot of people call me friend. But, at the end of the day, it's just, hopefully I'm a positive influence regardless of what you know or what you've experienced. So, yeah.
Well, to help answer that question, we have a message that someone sent. Can you see the TV okay?
I can see the TV.
Okay. So, Tyler, when you're ready, let's go ahead and play this for good old Jack.
Dear Maverick, when David asked me to write a letter to you for the podcast, he didn't have any guardrails, and he didn't offer much advice. He said, just write something to Jack. So that's what I did. And I want you to know that there are a lot of references in this letter to sports, because that's what I had in my computer. Mom and I are very proud of you and the young man that you've become. You're a really good teammate and a really good family mate. Because as you know, this is a pretty competitive family you're in. But you excel in competition and hard work. Early on in football, you started on defense before moving to the other side of the ball. And at times, you played both ways. I remember this first big hit from defense. You are persistent like a dog with a bone. There was a time when you wanted to carry the ball and you bugged Coach Pat to let you do it. And at the end of the game, he said, okay, but only if you score. And you did. This is the picture of you carrying the ball for that first TD. You always tried to do the right thing at the right time. How about the time in high school football when the rival team kept kicking you the ball because you would fair catch it? That's not what happened on the first play going into the second half.
It's a high, short kick to Ertz at the 24. Running right, 35, 40. He's into the clear. Look out. Past midfield, 45, 40. Angles left side. A man to beat to the 30, the 20, 10, 5. Touchdown, Jack Ertz on the kickoff return.
You don't quit. And while we're on the subject of Mustang football, I remember this broken play, and as you've often said, Mustangs never stop or give up.
Burville's got it, and they're going the other way. They're going to take this all the way to the house, to the 40, the 50, to the 40, the 30. Jack Ertz tracks him down. Now the ball's loose at the 15. It's fallen on by Adrian Morrell.
You will show off, especially if it's your idea. This is from your time playing football at Columbia, New York. And as I remember, they needed someone with special talents to introduce a new uniform, and you helped.
I am the one, the way your son don't need.
We got lucky with you and Piper. When Piper got married to Alec last July, I said in the wedding speech, if we could have picked a daughter, we would have picked Piper. And Jack, if we could have picked a son, we would pick you. Another reason for that is how you treat your faith. We're proud of how you live your faith and treat it as one of your pillars. You treat others with respect, and you're very close to your mom, and both are blessings. Nick Saban often talks about what do you do when it's 4th and 20 and you have to score. And he tells a story about what it was like for him being a high school quarterback, calling plays, and he desperately didn't want to call the last play. So he called timeout, and his coach said to him, think players when you have to score, not just plays. And Jack, you're a great player. You're a great son, and we love you a lot. Now, as I wrap up this letter, I'm going to put in some pictures so you and David might be able to find some other things to talk about. So enjoy.
What's going through your head right now?
I mean, that was my dad. No, my dad's one of my biggest cheerleaders. One of the things that he didn't say, my dad is going to be 75 this year. So he had me at 49, and so I'm 25 right now. And I had one of my buddies tell me, at some point, you're going to have to be the strongest man at your father's funeral. And I know that at some point, like, that might happen, like, sooner rather than later. My father's in great health. My mom's in great health. But it's one of the things that I've actually had conversations with my dad about. And to be able to sit there and, like, see him, see the family portrait in the background, and just see the shirt that my mom had picked out for him at Nordstrom's Rack, like the whole 9 yards. It's very heartwarming, and to know that you guys got to talk is extraordinary.
Yeah, no, he was a really fun guy to talk to. As a thank you gift for being here today, here's the letter that your dad wrote for you.
Oh,
framed
snap.
on some cool little, what'd you call that, parchment paper, I guess?
I would suppose, yeah.
Yeah. Let's look at this picture for a second. Who's this?
That's Troy Aikman on the left.
Should I know who that is?
He was one of the quarterbacks for the Dallas Cowboys. I believe he's now in the Hall of Fame. He wore number 8, and he won a couple Super Bowls as well.
Was that one of these meeting your hero moments?
It was interesting. So a little bit of backstory on that. My mom's best friend growing up, had a big house party, and she, knew a lot of big name celebrities. Like she had John Bon Jovi come to the house, and she's hung out with Jerry Jones, the whole 9 yards. And Troy walked in, And it's funny enough, that same again, I have such an OCD brain, but that same outfit that I was actually wearing these boots, or a very similar pair, when I got them for Christmas. And I was like, holy shit, I was like, that's Troy Aikman. And Wendy was like, oh, I know Troy. And I was like, you don't address Mr. Aikman that way. And she's like, no, yeah, absolutely, come on over, we'll take a picture. And that's the picture that my mom got. And there's I think I was 15 in that picture. Yeah, it was over 10 years ago.
Can you go to the next picture, Tyler?
Wow. You can tell I played a lot of football as a child.
Little guy there.
Yes, very much. The picture was my mom's idea. Well, that's one more. But with the last picture, you had the triplets. So you had Emmitt Smith, Michael Irving, and then Troy Aikman. And part of the Pee Wee football league that I played in, you got to go play on like the field, like at AT&T Stadium before they named it AT&T. And my mom was like, "You have your jersey on. Turn around. I'm gonna take this picture with you." And it was like her wallpaper or something. So that was the other picture that before this one.
Before we talk about this picture, so when you were a kid, I'm gonna butcher it, but you were diagnosed with
amblyopia. And
what, if for anyone that doesn't know, what is that?
Child lazy eye. So I wear one contact in my left eye. Technically, I have astigmatism. I have a +4 prescription. So my left lens is really thick. And even to this day, when I catch a ball over my shoulder, like a 3 ball over the top, if I'm on the right side, my right eye will track it, and I'll be able to see it clearly. But if it's on the left side, I have a tough time because I have to track it. Because if this eye gets tired, it just kind of goes black. So I had to wear an eye patch on my right eye to make my rod and cone cells fire properly, so I didn't develop a lazy eye, and so I could actually keep both.
And your dad told me a pretty cool story about, I think it was about when you had to wear a patch?
Yeah, no, I had to wear an eye patch. I think it was 6 hours a day is what they recommended. My mom was like, we're gonna do 8. And then many years later, the science came out, they're like, it didn't really matter. So long as you did more than 5, you were fine. So from 5 to 8 to 10 hours, you were gonna get the same benefit. But yeah, I had to wear an eye patch. I was very particular. I wanted to wear the camo one or the tan colored one. I didn't want the one with the footballs and the sports on it. I was very, very particular.
And you may have just answered this, but between the ages of as far back as you can remember to when you were 14, 15, 16, is there any particular day, moment, or event that would add a ton of context to who you turned out to be today?
It was one of the things my dad brought up. I like to stand out when it's my idea, but when it's somebody else's idea, I don't. It's just one of those weird things. And I remember the first time I got my glasses. I started wearing contacts when I was 8, but I have semi light sensitive eyes. And I had some old guy at the glasses shop talk me into getting transition lenses. It's a horrible idea for a first grader. So I walk outside into recess, and everyone's like, "Oh, dude, Jack, what's wrong with your glasses?" Hated it immediately. The next day we had to go get them changed. But I would say it's little things like that really kind of go to show that, regardless of what's happening, people are always going to look, so you might as well do what you're going to do. I was like, oh, wait, all these other people are telling me something's wrong, but I made this choice. I need to live with it. But instead, I wanted to change it. So, say little things like that have made me who I am, where I can be happy with, if I'm going to wear boots, I'm going to wear boots. If I'm going to wear, Jordans, I'm going to wear Jordans. If I'm going to wear flip-flops, I'm going to wear flip-flops. Regardless, I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability,
Who's this?
That is Steve Largent, wide receiver for the Seahawks. Old. I don't know if anybody in the room would know him. But yeah, that's whenever I was coaching football. Quarterback Ranch was the group that I trained with growing up, and they taught me how to catch the football. They taught me everything I know. And I was thankful enough to be able to work with him at one of their big passing academies over the summer.
Can we go to there's one more picture in particular I wanted to see. Yeah, that one.
Oh, man.
You've been scuba diving. You didn't bring this up to me in our first
episode.
No,
I didn't. It's actually funny how this happened. We were in Hawaii. Believe it or not, it's funny enough, the boat that's on the back of this shirt was what we were on. And they had this, oh, you can go scuba diving, you can do all these extra stuff on the catamaran. And I was scared. I didn't want to go scuba diving at all. And this surfer dude was like, oh, man, dude, we got extra spots. And I'm like, yeah, there's a reason why you have extra spots, because nobody wants to go scuba diving. And he's like, oh, dude, like, just, yeah, just come on. Just meet me over there. And I was like, oh, you can go talk to my parents, knowing my mom was going to say no. And sure enough, 20 minutes later, he came back to me and was like, all right, cool, your parents said yes. And then I went scuba diving. But, yeah, no, it was weird. I would say, like, being underwater and then, like, breathing. Like, even, like, when you put on a snorkel for the first time, like, it's against what you think that you're doing. But, yeah, it was quite an experience. Only time I've ever done it, and that was probably the last time.
Who in here has been scuba diving? A couple of people. Was it terrifying, or did you enjoy it? It was fun.
Aren't you special?
Yeah, my parents did me the disservice of showing me Jaws when I was like 4, 5, 6 years old, and you will never. I've jumped out of 7 perfectly good airplanes, and I intend to jump out of another one this year. But I will not go into water with sharks. It's not happening.
Yeah, I wasn't really thinking about the sharks. There's a lot of turtles and some fish, but yeah, no, it was cool. Like, I would say it was an experience for sure, but like it was nothing that I was like, I want to do this again. It was, yeah.
Have you been skydiving?
No.
Would you go?
I mean, yeah, I think like the cutoff is like you have to be like, like you can be too tall, but I would.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd jump out.
The first time I went skydiving, quick aside for you guys, I was raised in a very conservative Christian home, and the only things that we were taught about drugs is that all of them are bad and all of them will kill you. And that's all I knew. So the first time I went to go skydiving, I was 19 years old, and when they showed me the tandem, that's the person that's on your back that pulls the parachute for you, they were like, your tandem's over there at Station 8. Go introduce yourself. And as I'm walking over to him, he takes a massive bong out of his backpack and just takes a huge rip off of it. And I thought for sure little Christian ignorant David was like, I am going to die today because this guy just did drugs and we're about to jump out of a perfectly good airplane together. I lived and I've been 6 more times. It's a great time. You should go.
That's quite a story.
Yeah. I completely lost my train of thought thinking about marijuana. Oh,
we can go back to the pictures.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Who's this?
That was Coach Chapeau. He was my 6th grade world geography teacher. And funny enough, so we were doing like 8th grade like award banquet, and I went through and got an award. And so I thank all like the men coaches, like for like the boys coaches. And then I went and sat down, and like the other coaches were like, what about us? And so I went down the line, and then Coach Chapeau like went in for like a handshake or something, and he pulled me in. But yeah, he was a phenomenal teacher. He was one that did it right. A lot of what I learned from his class, like like the Tigris and the Euphrates, guys, Mesopotamia. That was that gentleman that like taught me all of that. So like that's why I know that the land between 2 rivers is Mesopotamia. The Tigris and the Euphrates is because of Coach Chapeau.
What else is in here, Tyler? I think we might move on to something else, but is there... What's the G Award?
I went to Grapevine, and so like it was like the well-rounded, like the kind of like the up, if you will. So it was like like MVP, if you will, but like it was our own kind of thing. And we need to get off like the middle school stuff. I get it, guys.
What's after this one? We can
Yeah.
skip this one. Oh yeah, actually we'll end on this one. What is going on here? Did you fall through the ceiling?
I didn't fall. I jumped. So in high school, we had a thing called boot camp in football, Texas football. It was in the off season. They'd like break us down to build us up. It was just, again, it was what the coaches were doing. And so the whole thing was like, all right, like we're going to do like the whole first day to like set the precedent. And so it was like, when you guys run into the locker room, we want you guys to be crazy. And so I like jumped from the doorway, and I went too high, and I cut like the side of my eye on the like that little like break in the shadow up there. Like that's what I dented with like my temple. And my dad took a picture. Yeah, that's the picture. Yeah, and that was what happened.
One of my friends just took a roofing job. It's door-to-door sales, essentially.
Oh, nice.
And he closed on his first client.
Good for him.
And they're going there to repair this roof, and he fell through one of the ceilings into the bedroom, and then a dog bit his leg, and he quit. So,
I mean, I would too. That sounds pretty bad. Actually, funny enough, so have you guys been in an attic before? Like one that's not like fully furnished, right? You guys know the rafters, and if you like ever get to a point where you have to walk on the rafters, and if you like walk between them, it's just sheetrock. My mom tells this great story of my father, where he was at my grandma's house, and he was up there like doing something on like the plywood that they had put down, but he like lost his balance, and my mom had her head poked through like on the stairs, and she's like, I just look over and your father's picking up speed, and he tripped and he had fallen through the ceiling right in between two lights.
Excellent.
You guys aren't laughing nearly as hard as I was, but it was so funny to imagine my father, the same silver fox on the screen, to have his legs dangling through the ceiling at my grandmother's house was just so beautiful. Because my dad's like the perfect guy. He doesn't get up to speed, he's got like a, bum foot, but kind of cruises, but that was fantastic.
So a question that I've been wrestling with, and I actually asked Alan about this, is ever since I moved to Austin, there have been some amazing things that have happened to me. Take the story from the beginning about the kid who came up to me in the gym. And in those moments, I was raised Christian. I sort of stepped away from the church about 17 years ago. And the question that I'm wrestling with is when these like almost miraculous moments happen in our lives, is this the result of hard work? Is it luck? Is it coincidence? Is it God? Is there, maybe even the term God isn't the right one. Is there some sort of something out there that as humans we don't even have a word for it that's sort of pushing us in the right direction that we should be going? You were raised in a faith-filled environment. You guys were raised Catholic, correct?
Yes, I was.
Starting there, how did that sit with you? Like, was it something where, yep, we go to church on Sunday and we pray before meals, or what was sort of, when you were a kid, what was your perspective of Catholicism? Is that a word?
Catholicism.
Catholicism.
Yeah, no,
was close.
when you read it, it looks like Catholicism. I for a long time, my dad was the one who would go, and I just was like, this is boring, like I'm not getting anything out of it. And then they'd be like, hey, all the people from 1st to 5th grade, we're all gonna get the kids out, and then they're gonna do the readings. And I was like, I don't want to go with these people. And then we'd come back, and we'd all go through this weird line, and we'd sit back down, and then we'd leave. And I never quite understood why, but I found that my dad just kept going. And he just kind of started to, over time, it became clearer to me that he's doing it for a bigger reason. It was part of the reason why I got confirmed, where, you have baptism, you have first communion, you have confirmation. And I didn't really understand, why I needed to get confirmed, but I understood that, my dad had made a promise whenever I was a kid. And then through what my parents had raised me to think is, I need to honor my parents because, they've done so much for me. So I don't quite see why, but I'm going to see it through because I know it'd be important for him, even though I don't understand right now. There are plenty of times that we can all probably sit back and think I did something because my parents were it's going to be good for you. Go do that because it's good for you. Go up and, make new friends at the summer camp because it's going to be good for you. And then that person ended up becoming your best friend since the end of time. So I would say that was really kind of how it started. And then I started, wrestling with it, grappling with it. And then oftentimes when I didn't have the understanding within myself, I would lean on my faith, and it would provide the bridge for understanding for me. And that's just where it worked.
Was there any particular moment that it took for you, that it went from being this is something that our family does to you were bought in for yourself? Because you're 26 now, correct?
25.
You're 25. And I know you still pray on a daily basis.
Of course.
What did that look like when you accepted it as your own truth versus something that your family sort of impressed upon you?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I would say when I really became a young man and really had to do it on my own, through college, I found okay, who do I want to be to have a family someday and to be like my father? Because my mom's not Catholic. And so I was all right, well, based on what the Catholic Church teaches, that's an obstacle. But my dad was able to overcome it. There's other things in my dad's life that, he overcame. He broke his leg at the age of 18 in a tractor accident. And so, with that, looking at, how if he had continued to play sports, didn't have that accident, maybe he doesn't meet my mom, maybe, he doesn't become a journalist, maybe he doesn't move to Texas, and then maybe I'm not born and we're not talking today. But my dad likes to sit back and say, oh, well, I think God had your mom picked out for me. We can all sit back and, understand things backwards, but that's how it has to be. Life must be lived forwards, but can only be understood backwards. So I would say I would oftentimes get to a certain point and say, looking back, my dad has put me on this trajectory to be a man of a house someday. And I'm going to do that by doing what he did, which is staying steadfast through the faith.
Your mom's not Catholic?
She's not.
Was that a point of contention for them at all?
From what I understood, no.
Sorry, Fred. It's a very personal
No.
question.
And if he were here, he would answer it as well. My mom was going to be converted. She was going to go through the catechese program, and the people that were doing it were just horrible. And like they just like made a bunch of people cry and were like, "You guys are all going to hell. It's just not going to work out." And just completely butchered the entire course. And my dad was like, "Yeah, we need to not do this." He just kind of like grabbed my mom and was like, "This is not how it should be." But my mom volunteered. I went to Catholic preschool. My mom volunteered all the time. She was very invested, and that was one of the things that I asked of her whenever I went to college. I was like, "Would you please go to mass with Dad on Sundays?" Because sometimes she was like, "Oh, he's gonna go. I'm gonna do this." Like they have their own dynamic, but that was one of the things I asked because that was something my dad and I did. When my dad gets older, we all have older parents or grandparents even, and they're not door greeters at Walmart, but they always like want a sense of purpose. So my dad, he joined the Elks Lodge. You guys know what the Elks Lodge is? Exactly. It's a bunch of old people in like a community like, we're Elks Lodge number 987. And it's just a bunch of old people with their Grand Magister, and they just, hang around and just have, fish fries during Lent. It's not necessarily Catholic, but they'll have fish fries, crawfish boils, and like the whole gambit. But my dad started like ushering, and they gave him a name tag. And so he's got like a name tag. And so I'll go to like mass with him on like 8 a.m. whenever I go back in town. And he's like, I got to tell the 10 a.m. crowd I'm not going to be there. So, yeah. But, yeah, I kind of got off track.
You grew up in South Dakota or in Dallas?
My dad grew up in South Dakota.
Your dad was in South Dakota.
Yeah, no, I grew up in the DF Dub.
Do you guys live on a ranch?
My dad did.
Your dad did. Were you ever on that ranch?
I've been to it, yeah.
Tell us the story about how your dad broke his legs that one time.
Oh, he broke his leg, yeah. So my dad was 18 and it had just rained. And if you think of like a traditional like tractor, like big wheels in the back and like the two small wheels in the front, where it's like right underneath like the cab of it. His dad had told me. I remember like as I've gotten older, my dad tells the story. Like I could see the frustration in his eyes that like he's like said like time and time again, like, and he's like reminding himself of it. But it was an angle, probably like a 45-degree slope, and he was going down, and the ground had shifted underneath him because it had rained, and so he jumped from the tractor, and it was a freak accident because of how he landed on the ground. He just completely shattered his entire leg, and geez, that was like the 1960s. So I mean, medicine wasn't very good, but yeah. He was surprised. I mean, he wanted to, but the doctors were surprised that he was able to keep his leg. Like that's how like serious it was. Yeah. But yeah, it completely altered his sports career because at one point Nebraska wanted him for baseball and for football, and then at that point everything just completely did a 180.
Did you choose football, or did your parents choose that for you?
Well, I feel like, so growing up, I did karate. I think as most parents just want like you into some like organizational like sport, whether it be like soccer or I played baseball, I played blast ball. My dad's first love was baseball, and then in the 4th grade, I started playing football. My mom didn't want me to play football, but because I was bigger than everybody else, she was fine with it. But I think baseball, really it was soccer, and then like karate, and then once I got into middle school, I started running track.
I didn't know you did karate for a while. And Keaton, this guy in the black shirt, he's been dabbling in some jiu-jitsu recently. And there's a part of me that just wants to shut this entire podcast down and have you two fight.
No, we don't need. I don't know. We need to fight. We need to do none of that.
You're so uncomfortable right now. Sorry.
Yeah.
And at what point did football go from being a hobby to you were all in? Because you played through junior year of college, correct?
Junior year of college, yeah. No, I'd say it's an interesting mindset because the only time that it ever started to become like work was like after I got like injured. Like after I broke my foot my junior year, like I was like, all right, like this is quite a bit, but I knew that I wasn't going to like play beyond that. I would say like for me, like I never saw sports as like work. I always saw it as just like, it's something I do. Like, so like Thursday nights, I'm like, all right, I'm going to baseball practice. Like I can't hang out with my friend. I'm going to baseball practice. Or like, Saturday mornings, like, oh, I have a game. And Saturday afternoon, it's like, okay, I'm chilling. And then I have, practice the next day. So what was your question?
At what point I don't know. Did football become something that was just like you did it for fun to really taking it seriously?
Yeah, I would say when I got into high school, because it's funny enough, playing football in college, playing football in high school, doing well, getting accolades. I didn't win a single middle school football game. We didn't win a single. We scored 4 touchdowns in 2 years. That's terrible. That's horrible. You guys watch a game and it's like 28 to like 7. You're like, oh, they didn't score at all. Imagine like that's like half your touchdowns for the entire year. It's terrible. But like to go from like that in like middle school to then like be like one of like the main guys in like high school, my junior and senior year, was like one of the things I never thought about. Like I was just like, I just know I'm just gonna keep working. It wasn't like I'm gonna prove them wrong. It was just like I'm just gonna continue to play ball. And I think oftentimes with like other things in life, that's what we do. Is like we put too much of an emphasis on it. Like, okay, this is a huge project. My boss he's trusting me this like for the first time, or like even like this. Like it's just another podcast. Like we're all just talking, right? Like what would be the difference of us meeting like right now versus like us meeting at like the bar across the street? You know, like maybe like a couple of like drinks. Like, you know, other than that, like I think we draw emphasis on things and make them bigger than they are. And like I think that's why athletes who play at a high level are able to do it, because it's like clockwork. They don't overthink it. Like Kawhi Leonard's just gonna go play basketball. He's not gonna play at the Madison Square Garden. He's just like, I'm playing basketball. The hoop just happens to be in a different location, right? You know? Yeah.
If you hadn't broken your foot, how far did you want to go with this thing?
Oh man, I wanted to play as long as my body let me, and that was one of the things I'm actually really thankful about. If I wrote a book, I don't think I had the patience to write a book, but if I did, it would revolve heavily around breaking my foot, because I think it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because my body gave out before my heart did, you know? And for me, it was going to be so hard for somebody to tell me I'm not good enough to do something. Rather, it was my body saying like, hey, I'm going to point you in a different direction. And that's kind of one of the topics like we've kind of been discussing today, is like, you know, how do you know like, oh, I need to keep going because of how far I could go. This is just a slight obstacle, you know, when you're like, hey, you know, episode 10 of the podcast, it's not doing as well as I want it to. Do I give up or do I keep going? You know, and then you keep going. And I'd say that's really all that it takes, is like, if you can have fun with it and you can continue, keep going. And for me, it was a decision of, if I want to, you know, run on the beach with my kids and throw the Frisbee and not have pain, I have to make the sacrifices now at the age of 22 so I can do that when I'm 30, you know, or 40.
Help me jog my memory a little bit. On our first episode, you were talking to me about something that could almost be like a defense mechanism of sorts, where if you ever messed up, you would almost like publicly denounce yourself before anyone else got the opportunity to.
Yeah, no, my biggest issue, like for me as a person, was I cared too much about what other people think or thought, and I would try to guess what I thought they were going to think before they actually did it. And so an example, I remember I was running a route, and I like broke it off too shallow. Quarterback put it in the spot that if I had been in the right position, I would have caught it. It would have been fine. And I wanted to show the coach that I knew that I was in the wrong. And so I like, you know, yelled a profane, you know, bit of language, and I can't right now. But I like visibly showed I was upset, and I knew that I had messed up. And in response, my coach kind of was like, all right, like Ertz knows that he's like done something wrong. I don't need to tell him. And like that, you know, I started to hear myself more than I needed to, which, you know, there's a cliche, there's kind of like a cringy quote, but it's like your inner warrior hears yourself, so you need to talk to it nicely. And I was always talking down to my inner warrior, like outwardly. And so that's what I would do, is because I didn't want to hear it from somebody else, because I wanted them to know, hey, I already got it taken care of. But even in that sense, if I already had it taken care of, I don't need to do that. And then if the coach is going to rip me a new one, it's like, okay, go ahead. I already know what I need to work on.
Imagine how our planet would look differently if we acted based off what we wanted to do and not based off of what are these people going to think of me if I go do this thing. How did you, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because I feel like you, in a way, you don't really care what people think about you, or if you set your mind to do something, you're going to go do it regardless of what external parties may say. How did you get to that place where you were able to act like that?
I would say in a sense of being comfortable being alone, you know, because it's a silly example, but last time on the podcast, I had a towel because I was going to go work out. And sometimes I'll just have a towel with me, and sometimes at my job, my boss will be like, oh, Jack's got his preacher towel out, because I sweat like a pig. And I would always have it with me. So I'd go to the gym, and we'd go eat after the gym, and I'd have my towel with me, and I would just like put it on my head. Like I would just wear it like on my head as if like, you know, it was, you know, meant to be there, like a hood. And I remember like one time I was like with my parents, and I had my towel like at my waist, and they were like, what are you doing with a towel? Like, that's not correct. Like, you're not supposed to have that. And I was like, you guys should see me whenever like whenever I'm out with my people. But like same thing when my mom was like, you need to not wear overalls when you go out. She's like, you're never gonna get a girlfriend. And I was like, you'd be surprised how many people can dig the overalls. But it was thinking to myself like, this is what I want to do. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not hurting myself. And like, darn it, like I want to do it. And so I'm gonna go forth with it. And yeah, people are gonna make fun of it. People are gonna do what they're gonna do. But like, for that, I've kind of carved out my own like section of like feeling good about how I dress. It's like I feel confident with like what I wear and how I look. But it came from a lot of like leaps of faith within myself.
Yeah, when Jack showed up for his first episode, I think I was poking fun at you a little bit for bringing the towel with you, and then fast forward about an hour, and I was sobbing about something.
He needed it.
Because I never cry on the podcast. And yeah, you were kind enough to offer that to me. You didn't bring it today.
No, I
could have used that about 30 minutes ago.
It's actually in the car.
So let's talk about alter egos for a quick second. Or maybe a few minutes. So I believe that when I'm on the podcast, there's a completely different version of David that shows up. In fact, David's not here right now. My alter ego is Matt Murdock. It's just a superhero that I love. And I feel like Matt is here when I'm podcasting and David is asleep somewhere else. When you're on stage, or not on stage, when you were on the field, did you ever feel like you harnessed like some sort of alter ego to find success, or is this just completely foreign and crazy talk to you?
No, it's not foreign. I would say like in terms of like an alter ego, like I'd say maybe. I would always still feel like it was like myself, but I would be like so locked in with what I was doing that like I tuned everything out. It's like when you're driving down the road and you like snap back into reality and you go, oh, like I was like, what happened like the last 500 feet? Because you were like listening to the music, you were like looking at the bird, Yeah, you looked up. You were zoned in on something else that you were like, oh, snap. Like, if something else had happened, would I have reacted to it? You just completely out of sight, out of mind. And that's how I was on the football field. My sister had to, like, tell me, like, when I played defense and I'd be in, like, a stance, she's like, one of your legs, like, twitches, like, it bounces. Like, I was, like, ready to do it. And, like, if you sit there, like, you're doing it right now. Like, you probably didn't even realize it. Again, I'm not calling you out. Yeah. So, like, just to, like, kind of just be locked in, I would say is how I was. I'd ignore the crowd. I'd, just be like, okay, cool, next play. All right, cool. This is what I need to do. And then I just do it.
You went to New York for school, correct?
Yes.
How'd you decide to go there?
They offered me to play football.
Perfect. Easy. And while you were there, Fred mentioned to me, at least I think this was while you were in New York, that you were mentoring someone who you anticipated was going to be a pretty good football player one day. Do you know who I'm referencing?
No.
Okay. It was a young man who ended up passing away in a car accident.
Oh, Jackson. Yes.
Yeah, Jackson.
Yeah, I know.
Talk to me about Jackson.
So Jackson Coker was number 16. Austin Westlake helped them win a state championship. He was a man of faith, man of many friends, and just an all-around great young man. And it was 2020. It was COVID. We were all on Zoom. And so I was living in Arlington, Texas, and Jackson was still here in Austin. And we were all planning on coming back in the following summer, following fall for football. And I remember he was like, hey, like, this is my room. Like, I'm on the 11th floor. I'm like, oh, dude, like, you're like 2 doors down from where I was when I was a freshman. So I'm sending him videos of that. Like, we're talking about the playbook. I'm like making sure like everything's good. I'm checking on the younger guys, making sure like their weights are good for like, like the training bit that we're doing. And I remember I got in the car and I was going to go work out after morning classes, and my coach calls me on FaceTime, and my coach and I had a really good relationship, and he was just like, "What's going on, Ertz?" And I was like, "What's up, coach? I'm just going to go lift. What are you doing?" And he's like, "I have no other way to say it." He goes, "Jackson's dead." And I was like, "Excuse me?" And he's like, "Yeah, like you're like the second or third person I've told." But Jackson was coming back from an early workout session at 7 a.m, and it was a one-car accident. He was ejected from the car, and it was one of those things that like I was kind of had like a hysterical reaction to it, like almost to the point where I was like laughing, where like I didn't have an emotion to attach to it. And like when I told the guys, I remember I came in the door, brought them all like in the foyer, and I was just like, guys, I was like, Jackson's gone. And then later that evening, I cried. I just like bawled my eyes out, because it's so tough to see somebody so young not be able to live out their dream. And he wanted to play football, he wanted to contribute, and he just wanted to be a well-rounded individual. And what's even beautiful, to put it in full circle, I lift at Lift ATX, and if you guys have ever been there or seen it, in the leg area, there's a flag room. Like, they have all these flags, and I gave it to them a long time ago. But I gave him a Columbia flag, and I had my mom spray paint Jackson's initials and his number on it, and my gym finally hung up the flag. So if you guys ever see it, it's underneath the red hack squat by the mirrors in the leg room. But yeah, to be able to like be in his town and then put his flag, I even texted him about it. Like, that's the kind of stuff that, like, it's hard. Like, death is something that does happen, but you don't expect it to happen so soon, right?
How did you move past that?
I would say, the more it happens, the better you get at it. And there's been a lot of that's happened in my life. My mom's dad passed away when I was in the 5th grade. My dad's mom passed away when I was in the 6th grade. And then my mom's mom passed away when I was in the 7th grade. And then I believe my dad's stepdad passed away when I was in 8th grade. My dad's biological father had passed away 7 days after I was born. And as I've gotten older and become like, a young man myself, for my father to be that strong, just kind of speaks to the mountains of, who he is and what he's, been able to endure. And that's just a fraction of like what my dad has had to go through. But with Jackson specifically, it was one of those things of like, as I wish I knew him more, but because of what I know from him, he wouldn't want us to sit around and pout about him. He would want us to do things and say, Jackson would have wanted it this way. That was one of the things that they said at the funerals, like, you don't put a light on a hill just to put a basket over it. You put it, so it's one of the Bible verses, you put it up there so it can be a beacon for others so that they make see the path. And so, that's what we want to do for Jackson.
Yeah, I love that. So you're in college, you're playing football.
No, I'm not.
You were in college, you're playing football, your life has a very clear direction that you think you're going, and then junior year comes around and you have an injury.
Yes.
Tell us that story.
So I had a Jones fracture. So if you can imagine all the bones in your foot, the long bones, I broke the 5th metatarsal of my right foot. And it was the last play of the first day of spring ball my junior year. And this was like the time where I was like, all right, like, there's a younger guy who's, a much better athlete. He can run faster. He can jump higher. Yeah, he actually ended up transferring from Columbia to Kansas. And shout out Bryson. I gave him a shout out the last time. But I broke my foot. I hobble off the field, get an x-ray. Trainers are like, you're done. And I was like, what is this? And he's like, that's a Jones fracture. And he's like, your rehab's going to be 3 months. And already right there, I'm like, man, I was like, they already, see this guy playing above me. I'm already going to be set down even farther. I don't know what I'm going to do. And it was a lot of prayer to see what my trajectory was going to be, because I wanted to come back. I wanted to play. I wanted to do my thing. And when I thought I was going to come back and like start to like play my role of like that number 2, like, all right, Jack, like we're going to need you to go block on run plays. Like we're going to save all like the cool, like, receiver stuff for Bryson. And we're going to like let you do like this stuff because you're good at it. I ended up developing a hairline fracture on top of the previous fracture. And if I were to keep playing, there's a chance that I might re-break my foot. Which, if you re-break the titanium screw, they got to go in and cut it all out, and they got to redo it, and then at that point, like it might be tough to walk. So I just pulled the plug on the whole operation, and then just became quality control and started like play calling. So I got to wear the headset and hear the coaches cuss and do all that, and kind of just play coach for a year.
Yeah, so for me, my biggest passion is this podcast. And the nice thing about podcasting is if I ever break something, I can keep talking. So an injury would never stop this. But if something did happen where I was forced to a place where I had to shut the podcast down, I don't even know how I would contend with that, because this thing has become my entire life. It's like my whole identity. That would be crushing for me. I'd probably go crawl in a hole somewhere and just wither away. When you got the x-ray and you broke your foot, what sort of state of mind were you in during those weeks? It
was definitely a state of shock, because I remember getting the x-ray, practice is still going on, and trainer tells me your spring ball's over, don't even think about that. And so I'm sitting in my locker and I was like, I got to call my dad. And so I just called him and I was like, I'm done playing football, maybe forever. And that's my dad was like, compartmentalize it, like take it one week at a time, Like don't try to like, eat the whole elephant, you're going to cut it up into bite-sized pieces. And I would even say like, if it's something that you truly love and you truly, really, really want to continue doing it, even if, crap hits the fan, you're going to figure out a way to do it, right? Like we've even seen comedians that are mute that type their stuff out and they're still able to talk, right? Like if you got to a point where you couldn't speak, guarantee you with technology and how things are, you would say, I'm going to continue to do this. Like I'm going to find a way to do it, right? If you didn't love it enough, you wouldn't. So I don't think you have to necessarily worry about that. If you are in a state where you can't even do that, well, you probably got other things you're thinking about already. So, but yeah, that was kind of like where my mind went immediately. Was like, all right, I got to tell my dad. And then at that point, it's like, all right, what do I do? And I knew that I had seen some other guys got hurt with football, and they just left. Like they wouldn't really come in, like, you wouldn't see them around. They'd do their rehab and then they'd go back home. And I was like, no, I'm going to be present in practice. I'm going to have as much fun with it as possible. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah. I'm going to do a quick pivot, but before I do, we're going to do a little audience poll. Who here is in a similar boat to where I am, where you have not talked to one or both of your parents in a long amount of time? Am I the only one, or is there a few other people as well? There's a few people very quietly raising their hands. Everyone else on pretty good terms with your parents for the most part in this room? That's awesome. So as I was talking with your dad, one thing that was almost strange for me to listen to is how much he loved you, because my dad does not. And like I even as I was watching this video when he sent it to me, I was like, you guys are so close. This is so awesome. What works for you guys? How'd you guys get to be that close with each other?
I always go to my parents for different things. I would say with people who are blessed enough to have a father figure and a mother figure in their lives, I think most of us are going to agree that we go to them for various things. Like I remember I was telling my mom, I was like, I'm going to file my taxes soon. And she's like, well, make sure you talk to your father. And I was like, yeah, okay, I don't really need to because I have all my documents. But, I would say with my dad, it was, the same way that you get to know anybody is just by spending time with them. And I would say even in like a religious sense, they always say like if you pray and you get to know God, you're going to get to know him better. If you just like met one person at the grocery store and the only time you saw them was once every 2 weeks when you go to the grocery store, you're not going to know that person very well. You're going to know the person at the gym, or you're going to know the person at the movie theater. If you go to the movie theater every single Saturday, you're going to know the same person who's working that same shift because you interact with them more. So my dad and I got close because he was the person that would discipline me, but he was also the person that would, pick me up whenever I fell down. And he was also going to be the person that was, going to tell me when I was full of crap. He's also going to be the person that was going to tell me, that's good. I like that. And so that was how I got to know my dad. It was just through experience.
Would you say are you on any particular mission in life? What do you want to get out of your life over the next couple of years?
I have a shirt. You guys know the Blues Brothers? You guys know? Yeah. So we had a neighbor. His name was Jake. And then my mom had a custom shirt for Jake. And then my dad got the shirt that said Elwood. And then on the back it said On a Mission from God. Completely irrelevant to what we were talking about. But it says that on the back. And it's in reference to the movie. But I would say that is what I'm on, is like, again, the mission from God. And to me, that's just to be a good example, even from like the age of like 7, just praying every night, like at my bedside. I don't know what was going to happen, but I just wanted to be used as an example. And sometimes it sucks because there's oftentimes people will tell me, they're like, Jack, I thought you were going to be like such a jerk. I thought you were going to be such a bad person, but you're actually really cool. I'm like, that's great. It's such a backhanded compliment. And I had to ask one of my buddies, I was like, why would somebody phrase it like that? And then he asked the question back. He goes, well, why would somebody admit fault in the first place? And then I think to myself, is it because they feel bad? And they kind of just shrugged his shoulders. He's like, it could be. It could be a lot of different things. But I would say for me, the mission I'm on is just to be an example. Because no matter what, I'll wear my cowboy hat and I'll go out. I spend a lot of money on Western apparel. Okay, I like it. It's what I buy. I want to wear it. And people will be like, oh, here comes the cowboy over here. And I'm like, you don't even know me, dude. And I'm like, I get it. I'm like, it's a nice hat. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of nice. But like that's it. It's also why I have to be so confident with what I'm going to wear. If I want to blend in, I'm going to blend in. If I want to stand out, I'm going to stand out. But if I'm just going to do me, that might happen either way.
Yeah, it was one of the questions I asked Fred is what is something that people misunderstand about you at first? And his answer made me chuckle. He said, when people first meet you, they probably perceive you as an arrogant jerk. And then as they're processing that thought, you hand them a lollipop, specifically Gum Gums.
Yes, the Dum Dums, yeah. So I picked it up in college. I won't drink a whole lot, so I'll indulge with candy, and I'll have like a crossbody bag, which my mom was like, you have to be big enough to like have a crossbody bag. And I'll fill it with like hundreds of Dum Dums. And so I would have them, and I'd be handing them out to my buddies. And so then, people would come up and be like, where'd you get that? And then I'm like, oh, you mean this? And then just pull out a Dum Dum and give it to them. And then, like, groups are merging. Like, again, for all you are in Austin, I'd be at Latchkey standing on a table just tossing Dum Dums to people. Like, that, and it's peak. Like, it's great. Like, I love it. Like, it's fantastic. And people know me as, like, the lollipop guy.
You haven't given me a Gum Gum yet.
I have not.
No,
I should have brought
That's
some.
okay. I've had you on my podcast twice. And,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
I'm sorry.
One question that I ask almost everyone before they come on the podcast is there anything going on in our culture that has caught your attention over the last couple months? Typically, we stay away from politics. I think there's enough noise out there on that subject already. I've had everyone answer with statements such as sex cults to aliens to AI is obviously a hot topic that a lot of people are talking about right now. What have you noticed that's going on planet Earth over the last couple months that's caught your attention?
I would say, it's tough. There's so many things to pick from, but I would say as of recently, I think a lot of us make choices and don't understand that there might be delayed consequences. It's like you do something in the now, and you're like, yep, this has no ties to anything that happens in the future. But then 10 years down the line, somebody asks you that question. Like I without naming names, if you indulge in, certain, recreational drugs, whether they be legal or illegal in like certain states, if you go do a job interview somewhere and they say like, have you done this? And if you're like, yes, it's like immediately like, no, same way like in a driving test, if you hit the curb, you immediately fail. So I think that there are often times where people will do things because like, oh, you just live once. I don't think that's necessarily like a bad way to live at some points. It's like, oh, I only live once. You know what? I am going to go to the library, or I am going to go, to the park today. Or you know what? I am going to move to Austin, Texas, because I do only live once and I want to do something different. But I think when it's not fully like thought out into a point where it could be detrimental, I think it could have a bad consequence, And it's tough to explain because it makes sense in my head, but it might not make sense to like everyone here. But I would say like in the sense of like, like relationships, holding yourself as like a man or a woman for like, a future marriage, it's like, how do you want to be, now? Because, everyone's concerned about everyone's track record, but it's like, you should be more concerned about like with like who you are. And if you're focused on who you are, well, then you can take care of somebody else, We'll get into it later probably, but I do want to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
We will talk about that.
Fantastic.
Have you made one of those decisions where down the road you were like, shoot, I wish I hadn't done that? Absolutely. I mean, there like for me, it's like a religious sense. It's like you want to hold yourself to be, a very well-rounded, respected individual, but you also want to have the experience to be able to know what you like and what you don't like. And so, whenever you don't experience things, then you have, ignorance, or the world might call it ignorance, where, somebody else might say like, well, no, that's called purity. So it's like being able to balance those things, I'd say, is really what I grapple with. And right now we're in the season of Lent, and one of the things that I've given up is anger and frustration. And for me, it's hard sometimes because it goes back to like, speaking down to myself, because, that's where it starts. I do think that people treat others the way that they treat themselves, because everyone treats themselves pretty poorly, I'd say, on a regular basis. Because, how many people actually look at themselves in the mirror and say, man, you look good today. Like you look good. Like you're on top of it. Like, some of us might have the expo marker with our, affirmations written on the side. They might have our favorite Bible verses, or, our favorite quote from like, I don't know, Margaret Thatcher is just sitting right there. But, yeah. Kind of got away from it there. I have a funny Lent story for you. When I was 19, our pastor at the time asked us all to give up something for 40 days. And he said, you can choose what it is, whether it's food, television, cigarettes, but whatever it is, stick with it. And so me and my roommates get home that night, and we're talking about what we potentially are going to give up. And my buddy John says, "Oh, I'm going to give up steak." And I'm like, "All right, cool. No steak for John for 40 days." We get home the next day, and he's eating a steak. I'm like, "John, you couldn't even last 2 days. Your self-discipline is so low that you broke within 48 hours of making this commitment." And he said, No. I just gave up steak yesterday. Today I'm giving up watermelon. And I'm like, "So you were just going to go through the next 40 days arbitrarily picking out like, oh, I'm going to give up In-N-Out today, and that's my sacrifice to be a better Christian boy." I love John because he was always like, this is just the epitome of who he is.
I mean, that's a very creative way to do it. I never thought of doing it that way personally. I mean, I've honestly, like in a roundabout way, if like you're gonna give up something like that, like that, you could say like I'm gonna give up a different, luxury item that would inconvenience myself in that day. Well, then that sounds like it's something different. Really, the whole essence of it is just to like, deprive yourself of a luxury the same way that Christ did when he was in the desert, where he fasted for 40 days. That's really in all what it is. And then, getting closer in prayer. So, but yeah, to say I'm going to give up steak today and then, I haven't had, Campbell's soup today, so I'm going to give up that. It's like, okay, well now you're retroactively saying this is what I've given up.
I'm curious how you plan on giving up anger and frustration, because you could walk out of this building today, jump in your car, drive out to Lift ATX, some person on the freeway cuts you off, and immediate rage.
Man, it happened yesterday. I was driving right over there by Congress, and this pickup truck came off of the like the shopping center and across 3 lanes of traffic and just sat right in front of the 3rd lane. And the other person was trying to turn because they were trying to beat the traffic, and I was like the first one in like the pack coming off the line, and the person just like, did the whole like, oh, I'm in a bad spot. Then they looked the wrong way, and then they looked back at me, and I just, again, put both hands on top of the steering wheel and just kind of hit him with one of those, and they were just like, "I'm sorry." And I was just like, "Yup." And I literally caught myself, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. Because not long ago, it was like literally like the second day of Lent, there was a Mack truck in the right lane, and there's a pickup truck getting on the highway, and I didn't see the pickup truck. And so the pickup truck speeds up, and I'm in the left lane, and I get over to take the exit, and he lays on his horn, and then he flashes his brights. I drive a low sedan. This is right in my rearview mirror. But again, I wasn't like so angry, but I rolled that window down, and I gave him like the calmest middle finger ever, and I was like, it's working. I was like, it's working. I'm getting better. But again, that was the first day, and then I was knowledgeable of it, and I talked about it, and it's like, it's fine. When my neighbor's kids, just run into my garage and just grab something, it's like, okay, I have time. So like, it's like there's no need to be upset, Like not too long ago, there's a dent in my car. I love my car. There's a dent in the side. I was pretty pissed, but it's like I'll get it fixed sometime. It's just paint and plastic. Like I just have to remind myself, like from dust we came, to dust we'll return. What it is now, we won't have forever. Just keep on keeping on.
I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but the only downside I have found to living in Austin, Texas in the 3 years that I've been here is the drivers are truly terrible. Has anyone else experienced this?
Try Houston. Houston's worse.
I'm not going to Houston anytime soon. So after Lent is over, will you go back to being angry and frustrated?
Probably not. That's the whole point. It's funny because most of the time it's like, oh, I'm giving up steak and I'm not going to have steak, and now I can have steak. So I would say with Lent, it's one of those things that it's supposed to make you better, because if you just give something up and you don't pray about it, then you're just giving something up. But if you're giving something up and you're trying to grow closer to God, like, we use the time to, then, now you're doing 2 things at once. It's like the same kind of thing where if you hear something, you're going to retain 30% of it. If you hear something and then you say it, you're going to retain 50%. And then if you hear it, you say it, and you write it down, chances are it's 70 plus. So the more you do it, the more senses you get involved, the better. Hello.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Sure.
If your life was a movie, what would the audience be screaming at you to do differently right now?
That's a good question. Anybody? I don't know. That's a good question. That really is a good question. Yeah, I don't know. What if I turn the tables on you? What do you think?
I don't want to answer that.
Okay, yeah.
There's a reason I'm hosting this thing.
Yeah.
No, I would say, so I've been going to see a therapist now for about 6 months.
Nice.
And I believe that Evan believes that his job is to convince me that I am a good person. And listening to that and believing it is something that I could do better at. I think we all have these moments where we are our own worst critic. And I am by far the worst.
Well, let me ask you a rhetorical question. Are you a flat earther, or do you think it's round?
It's round.
It's round. You know it's round, right?
Yeah.
So if it's something that you know, why do you need to be convinced? And I think that's the tough part when it comes to like us. It's like, you know the right thing. You know that if somebody did you wrong, that you should forgive them. That you should be able to say, hey, I'm gonna move on. You know, what happened is what it was. I don't feel bad because I made every choice with the information I had, and I was in, good faith with it. Just leave it at that. But we can tell ourselves that's the answer, but we still want some sort of confirmation with it, And that's what's tough, is being able to tell yourself that. Because I'm the same way. I'll look for validation from other people because, they see everything, but you know yourself better than anybody. Or so you think.
Yeah. No, one of my favorite moments on the podcast was with, there's this guy up here in this camouflage hat named Nick Hartley. And during his episode, I asked him straight point blank, are you a good person? And your reaction of just like squirming in your seat, and you're like, why do you keep asking me that? But I think it's something that is not extremely unique to me. I mean, how many people in the audience do you guys think you're good people? All right, so maybe it's just me and Nick. But yeah, does anyone else struggle with that? You do, yeah. Grant, yeah. What's your name? I don't know you. What is it? Good to meet you. You're my chief Gen Z correspondent's girlfriend? Excellent, good. Before I ask you my next question, in a couple minutes, we're gonna have some topics that we may venture down that you guys are gonna vote on, and you guys are gonna sort of dictate how this thing ends. Before we bring those up though, if there is anything that you guys that's been on top of mind for you, and you would like to join us on stage and discuss it for 5 minutes or so, I'm going to give you that opportunity. So if there's anything that's been on top of your mind that you want to riff on with me and Jack for a few minutes, we'll do that in a couple moments. Before we do, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
Ooh, we got notes for this one.
So how many of you guys are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Fantastic. Fantastic. So there are 5 levels. The bottom is what you'd imagine for just like anybody to have civilization, food, water, and shelter. Like once that's taken care of, okay, like you're good. The next part is safety. It's a sense of security, health, having resources. It's that next level up. So it's like what I have to establish myself as a sound person, I can now, elaborate on those things. The next part is love and belonging. This is where you have friendships, you have families, you have intimacy, whether that be with a romantic partner, whether that be with your friends, whether that be for your family. And then next, you have esteem. This is respect, status, and recognition. And then the last one is self-actualization. And this is realizing one's full potential. And I think what's interesting is when I was thinking about it, I think a lot of us will try to put respect, status, and recognition before the sense of love and belonging. So you'll try to take the 4th level and you'll try to put it in for the 3rd. Or you'll say that I need that much more than I do need, the security and health and resources. But I think it goes back to you can't take care of somebody else in a complex way if you can't take care of yourself in a simplistic way. So it's making sure that you are established as a person to say, I understand my needs and I understand my wants. And so I'm ready to create this relationship with somebody. Once I have that relationship, I'm able to expand on that. I think each level expands on it. So then when you have the 4 things taken care of, that's where you're able to reach the top, which is where am I going? Where am I going to better myself? But when you're asking yourself, how am I going to better myself? But you don't even have the levels beneath it. I think that's what makes the question unanswerable, because you need to work on like the 2nd level. I need to have a sense of security within the physical parts of my day-to-day. And then, okay, cool, financially I'm sound. Until I'm financially sound, I shouldn't worry about all these other things, which is extremely tough in a world like today. You know, it's ridiculous how, most Americans don't have, retirement funds set up, because a lot of us are like, oh, it'd be really cool to buy this now and then, have it, rather than saying like, all right, I don't need that. Let me just save on it and let me just, plan that later. So I think when we like jumble Maslow's hierarchy, now I say Maslow is like the way, the truth, and the light, but I think when we like mix it up, or when we kind of say, yeah, I'm satisfied, I'm going to move on, right? Like if you didn't have food or water or shelter, you're going to establish that first. If you're out in the woods, you're not going to be like, man, if you and me were out in the woods, I'm not going to be like, man, I hope David thinks I'm a good guy right now. I'm going to be like, dude, you go get water. I'm going to start to find a dry place for us to set up camp. And once we have that established, cool, what's the food situation like? And then once shelter and the food's taken care of and we have a nice place where we don't have to worry about those things, now we might have a friendly conversation and develop the relationship to then have the sense of, okay, here's the situation, here's the respect between us, and then we can elaborate and say, what's next? I think that's the way that we need to think about it. And if you're too worried about the next step, it means the first step hasn't been taken care of. That's what I wanted to talk about.
Have you heard, or has anyone heard of spiral dynamics? This was something that was introduced to me 2 weeks ago, maybe, and very similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where at the top end of the spiral, you get to a place of self-actualization, but no one's heard of it, so we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. Are you loved?
Am I what?
Loved.
Am I loved? Yes.
By who?
I would say I'm loved by my parents, I'm loved by God, and I would say by some people directly and indirectly. Because if you don't know what I did was out of love when I did it, someday you will. Or at least I pray that you do. Because I've never done anything out of spite to anybody. And, I've had to leave relationships because they weren't good for me, or weren't good for them. And whether the other person doesn't see that now, it's like, it could be my, own ignorance, but everything that I've done with the information that I have at the time for the best of the people that were involved. And yeah, no, I would say that I'm loved. My dad, he reminded me of it. The greatest gift of all is your life from God, and your gift back to him is what you do with your life. And so that's one of the things that really keeps me going, is because the greatest love of all is to lay your life down for your friends. And I think that can take the form of many things, whether that be, to come here and to support you, whether that be to say a prayer, or whether that just be to just show up. Love can take the place of many, many different forms.
Before we give some control to the audience, what did you want to talk about today?
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. No, I would say, I didn't have a specific topic, but I've sat and I've listened to people flap their gums for a lot, and I just hope that we can talk about something that everyone here wants to talk about, or at least a majority. So that was part of the reason why I think the poll thing would be pretty cool. So it's more of whatever you guys want to talk about, so you guys get something out of it, because it takes a lot to be able to sit here and listen to me talk. David's really interesting. I appreciate you guys, but I was like, I want to make it interesting. I don't want you guys just to sit there and be like, all right, I supported David. I want to be like, that was actually pretty cool. It's like when you go to a movie and you didn't think it was going to be that good, or you go to a comedy show and he starts talking about birds. Yeah, he looked up again. Yeah, he's been on his phone. Yeah. So I'd say that's really what I want to talk. I want everyone to be able to get a nugget out of it. Just could be a little small thing. It'd be like, oh, I like his boots. Or like, oh, it's like David's not wearing pants. That guy's not wearing a hat. I want somebody to get something out of it.
What's on your guys' mind today?
Birds.
Other than birds.
Oh, you noticed.
Why does he have two watches on is the question.
So I heard Shannon Sharp say it. It's arrogant. Again, you guys are going to be like, this guy is a jerk. So this was a nice watch that I bought myself, and then this is my Apple Watch. And so I'm going to go work out after this, and I also wanted to wear this one. I didn't want to forget this one. So this one tells time and keeps my calories, and this one tells you how valuable my time is. Oh, no, people aren't laughing. No, that's why. It's because I wear this one like a whoop, Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
I feel like Alan might have a good question. I don't know why. You just.
So what are you doing now, and what are your goals in life?
Oh, Okay. So for me, I'm creating a sense of purpose within my day-to-day. So every day I try to do something that's a little bit uncomfortable. And oftentimes I find myself doing that in the gym. So with sports, always schedule oriented. We're going to do a linear strength progression. It's going to take 8 weeks. Okay, we have a season. It's going to be 10 weeks, and then we're going to go on from there. I've always been on a clock, and so for me, it's like without structure, I am aimless. And in order to achieve the next thing I want, I have to have some sort of structure. And so right now, it's maxes in the gym, and that trickles down into my diet, my day-to-day, how much sleep I get, and honestly, how I spend my money. And by trickling down, I'm able to compartmentalize what I want to achieve into bite-sized pieces. And then that way it makes it fun. So like every single week, I can tell you exactly what I did. Like there's no like wasted time, but I also have time to relax. So for me, the hope, in terms of religious sense, it would be to become a father, to have a family. So everything is in preparation of that. But like for me, it's like I'm gonna be like a really strong dad, like physically. So I'm gonna get a new deadlift max. And so I was like, what do I need to do? I was like, I'm gonna buy a new belt. I'm gonna talk to my buddies. I'm gonna do some research, and then I'm gonna start my program. So it's little things like that. But that could be for anybody. Like if you want to read 3 books this year, start by reading 10 pages a day. Or reading 5 pages a day. Like break it down and bite-sized pieces.
I had this moment about 2 weeks ago where I printed, not printed, but I ordered 750 of these guys for the event today. And I go out to Zilker Park about 2 weeks ago to hand them out. And for some reason, I was more scared of handing a flyer to a stranger than I have been jumping out of a perfectly good airplane. And I spent about 2 hours at Zilker that day overthinking this. And guess how many flyers I handed out? Wrong. 0. I got so scared, and in my own head, I didn't hand out a single one.
Just put them on the table at that point. Just leave them.
Well, no, because I wanted to talk to people about the show and whatnot.
Talk to 700 people?
Well, I did this week.
David, I know how much you talk. You're not going to get through 700 people in a day.
So I went out with my buddy Nick and for dinner, and I was telling him about this Zilker experience, and he said, nothing changes if nothing changes. And so do you want people at this event, or do you want to be scared and just not do anything about it? And I thought at the end of the day, what's most important for me is to get over this fear, because I want people to show up and to be a part of this and get a feel for the podcast and whatnot. So I did go out back to Zilker and to UT this week. Probably one of the scariest things I've ever done, but I sure did hand out those darn flyers.
There you go. Did you feel better afterwards?
I felt amazing.
There you go.
Yeah. I got rejected a lot, which was interesting. You'd walk up to people, and I would have people who would just be like, no.
Well, if you think back to it, I think that's exactly that's an example of, doing something that's uncomfortable, right? And the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. How many times, again, with the guys, when you go out to a bar and one of your buddies is like, I'm going to talk to a girl today, and he just never does it. And then he finally does it, and he's just like, that was terrible, I got rejected. But it's but then you have the other guy who's just he's just it's going out of style. He's talking to everybody, anybody with a pulse, he's just going up to talking, and he has no shame. And you're like, I want to be like that. It's because you're putting too much emphasis on the one. If you're in sales and you're going to go knock on 50 doors, you might get, 40 of them slammed in your face. 5 of them are going to open and say yes. The other 5 are going to open and say no. So, it's a 20% success rate of the door opening. But if you do it time and time again, it's just something that is. So with handing out flyers, it's to be the same thing reaching out to the first person for the podcast. Now reaching out, you're like, I know what I'm going to say. I know how I'm going to do it. And I know that what I'm doing is good. If I have a negative interaction with somebody at work or with my job, I'm in sales. And if somebody doesn't appreciate, or they're angry at me, it's well, the previous 1,000 people I've talked to haven't acted this way. So I'm confident to know that what I'm doing is not wrong. It's probably how you're taking it. So hopefully I can be of, some sort of, outlet for you, but I know that I'm not the issue. But I'm, confident enough to know that, I want to help you the best I can. But again, it was something that was scary. You overcame it. And now if you ever do another event where you need to go hand out your own flyers, or you can have your Gen Z guy do it.
Yeah, my chief Gen Z correspondent, John Shorley. Yeah, another one of my favorite stories was actually with Thomas. And you had, when you were founding your business and looking for your first round of investment, how many investors said no to you before you finally got to the yes? 77 no's, and you kept trekking along. Heck yeah. All right, before we go to the screen, what else? Is there anything else on top of mind for anyone that you'd like to riff on for a couple minutes with us today? Grant.
Is this going how you thought it was going?
Yeah.
Are you happy with it?
I am.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, no, I'm having a blast. This is like the best day of my life so far. I love you too. Who said that, Frank? Anyone else? All right, let's see what's on the screen. So these are 4 questions that have sort of come up in conversations on the podcast with people at the gym. And I thought I would present them to you guys today. And you are going to vote on whichever one you think we should talk about. And then me and Jack are going to riff on that for a few minutes. And then maybe Ambrian will come up and sing one more song. And we're all going to get out of here and enjoy the rest of our Saturday. So question number 1. Is micro fame really what we want? Question number 2, are we building brands or are we building lives that we're proud of? When do I pivot versus when do I commit? And are we actually alone or just not being honest? And can we see the next slide, Tyler? So there's the four questions. If you'd like us to talk about number 1, which we'll say is top left, microfame, raise your hand. 1 person, 2 people. Question 2, raise your hand if you want to talk about are we building brands or lives we're proud of? 3, 4, 5. When do I pivot and when do I commit? 5, 6. Are we actually alone or just not being honest? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's start with that one. Let's start with are we actually alone or are we just not being honest? For the people that raised their hand for that one, I get that this is a personal question, but would you be willing to talk about to us about why you raised your hand for that particular prompt? Go.
It feels like a lot of us are going through similar issues, especially emotionally. The uncertainty of meeting new people, big new world, things that we didn't know were true coming out, things that we thought weren't true ended up being true. Just a lot of turmoil and confusion, and it feels like we're all going through it together. But when I'm on the road or out in public, it feels like we hate each other. It feels like everybody's against each other. Everyone's their own army against the world, and that doesn't make much sense to me. When the battleground that we're all in should be breeding camaraderie, for some reason we're all backstabbing, and it feels connected to that fourth question.
I don't know if you guys if you heard everything that Grant said, but essentially the comment that you ended with of, it sort of feels like we're all out for ourselves, sort of in this backstabbing mentality. What was the one other thing you said? You said it so well.
We're all facing the same problems,
Yeah, does anyone else resonate with that? Does that feel like that's sort of how...
We're all stuck. We're all doing what we can, trying our best. You get on the road, and people are short-sighted and angry. You go into a store and people cut you off. You go into a coffee shop and early in the morning and the pace is just move. There's no friendly faces. There's no hellos or goodbyes. It's harder than ever to make a new friend. And it's never been such a common issue that we all face together. I don't get it.
Are you doing anything to make friends right now?
Yeah, I mean, I've made a bunch of new friends in the last year. I found him as a friend, him as a friend, he's a good friend, she's my good friend today, you're my friend, we're gonna be friends. Anybody else who wants to? I'm trying my best, yeah.
I would say when you're in those coffee shops or you're in those situations and you have somebody that's like, just give me your money and tell me what you want, do you play along in like the negative sense, or do you usually try to, right the wrong?
I guess it depends on if it's a good day or a bad day.
Well, what constitutes a good day?
Things go well
No, 100%. I would say that even on the days that it doesn't feel like you like started off on a good day, it can always be a good day, because one thing that put it in perspective for me is if you had $86,400, some of you guys may know this one, and I came up to you and I said, hey man, you dropped $10, and you're just like, it's yours, buddy. You go ahead and have it. You'd be like, I'd say I got $10, but you're like, dude, I have more than $85,000 in my duffel bag with me. It's 86,400 seconds in a day. Just because you have a negative 10 seconds, is it really going to say that this whole $85,000 plus is just like gone to, to BS? So if it's like, all right, I had a 20-second interaction with my boss. I had a 2-minute interaction. $120 off 86,000, take it, And that's one of my perspectives is because I'll do the same thing. I would say that I had a horrible practice in football if I dropped one pass, because I knew that I had to be a perfectionist. But that was one of the things that I took with, talking negatively to myself, which then just snowballed to just not have any kind of good day, because I didn't feel like regardless of whatever I did, it was always going to be bad. But for me, it's like, all right, like I woke up. Okay, let me, thank the Almighty for just getting me out of bed. Yeah, I'm going to be sore. Well, I'm sore because of what I did yesterday, because of my workout. Well, let me be thankful for being sore. Okay, my foot actually really hurts. It's like, well, am I going to still be in a bad mood? Like, oh man, like I had this injury in football and I shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done that. It's like, you know what? I'm thankful enough to still have my leg to be sore. It's like, it's such an uphill battle. But by doing that, and if somebody else is going to have a pissy attitude towards you, it's like, all right, well, that's your MO. It's like, I'm not going to let it affect my $86,000 that I have. But it is tough. It is, because when you have other things that people don't know about, when you're struggling with things internally, and you're like, I just want somebody to, not blow me off when I say like, hey, I thought you had cool shoes, and they're just like, whatever, and they just keep walking. It's like, all right, well, the compliment still stands. You still have cool shoes, Just because they didn't take it well, does it still refute the comment? Does it still not last? We oftentimes, I think, do things because we want things in return, when in reality, we should just do them because they're the right thing. I love the joy of whenever I hold the door open for somebody and they're like, oh man, I really appreciate it. Like, thank you for seeing that. But if I hold the door open and they're on their phone and they're typical Gen Z and they're just steamrolling past, I'm going to be like, yeah, I still held the door open. Because what if somebody else sees me, and they're like, yeah, that guy held the door open. Chivalry's not dead, Like, it's those little things that, keep me going. But, it's extremely tough. Extremely tough, because there are times I'm like, nobody's here. It doesn't really matter. But then I'm like, oh, yes, it does. And then I'll go back and, I'll straighten out my car or I'll push in my chair before I leave the restaurant. So, but yeah, completely valid, because the world is truly just in it for personal gain. But as if you've seen Hacksaw Ridge, the main character, he was in a broken world. There's nothing wrong with trying to put a little bit of it back together. And we are friends.
Rod, you raise your hand for this one.
Seemed like an interesting one. I don't know. I feel alone around a lot of people. I'll be honest, I thought it was about aliens at first.
Speaking of which, both are equally scary thoughts.
I'm just trying to, chill out. I think we all feel that. Yeah, it's like there's a lot of what feels like social things that really aren't, I guess. At least for me.
Would you say like a public library? Like a spot where everyone could come meet, but everyone's going to meet separately?
Not even that, just in general. People don't seem to be really, but there's the facade of it.
Well, if you could rewrite to everybody to like program them differently, what would you have everyone change about themselves? It's a big question, because everyone's inherently different. But what's one thing that you would say, like, if you just second guessed before you did, or if you thought about before you didn't do, what would you want to leave them with? No, I mean, and that's completely valid. I would say that it's just there's too many variables sometimes to be able to answer those kinds of questions, because if everyone thought the same way, it's like, would that actually fix things? Or yeah, but
I think the other one that got the most votes, correct me if I'm wrong, was it the pivot one, or was it the one before? It was the pivot question. Why did you guys vote for that?
Pivot. Friends.
And Ross.
Okay. I was trying to appeal to the older crowd.
Is there anyone in particular that's considering pivoting from something or committing to something right now? All right. Well, we have to take a picture together, and I need to give you a hug before you go. So, you got at least a few more minutes. I mean, I know how I would answer this one. It sort of just falls back to what I said earlier.
Go ahead.
For the podcast, I committed to 21 episodes, and then you reevaluate and either go all in or drop it. And for me, I went all in because the social proof that I needed that this would be worth my time presented itself in the first 21 episodes. So I think, depending on what it is, because this is sort of a vague topic, is set some sort of milestone for yourself, and then once you get to that and put every effort into getting to that milestone. Don't but it. The library asked me not to curse today, so I was trying to think of a term. But yeah, set a milestone, and with just delusional discipline, go all in until you get to that milestone. And once you've done that, reassess and decide, am I going to keep going, or am I going to go ahead and drop this and pivot to something else? And that worked out. That was my own personal experience, and it worked out pretty well. So
I would say so.
Before we end this thing, anything else from anyone? Thoughts, comments? Did you guys have fun? Did you enjoy this? Yeah? Okay, cool. We'll do it again one day.
So, were you nervous going in doing this for the first time live?
I was nervous because the opening story is a very heavy one, and I wasn't sure how you guys were going to react to it. I also wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get through it without crying, and if I could get a logical start, middle, and end to it. So I was most nervous for that 15-minute segment. Once we moved past that, it was a breeze.
I thought you did an exceptional job. You're a great public speaker.
Thank you, Alan. Final thoughts?
It's all you, man.
Okay, I'm going to read you guys a story. For this, I'm going to ask you guys to close your eyes. And I wanted to end you with something hopeful. So hopefully the story will do that. So go ahead and close your eyes and keep them closed until I say the end. And while I'm reading you this story, I want you to put your imagination to work visualizing yourself of the main character of this story to the best of your ability. You wake up. Your current life, being in the Austin Public Library, sitting in on DSNSB Live, was just a dream. The actual reality, you live in a care home. You are your 90-year-old self, but the worst version of yourself controlled your entire life. Your entire life was run by your worst personality traits: ego, fear, pride, envy, greed, narcissism, procrastination, lack of patience. All your time is spent in regret, replaying all the mistakes. You never took a risk or listened to your gut. You pushed your family and friends away. The lazy care home team never checks in on you. Every part of your old body aches like you've run a marathon. Your left eye no longer works. You've lost one of your hearing aids. You try to get out of bed. You collapse to the floor. You crawl into a wheelchair. In front of you is a giant clock. The clock has 5 minutes left on it. Above the clock, there are 7 words: how long you have left to live. Your heart sinks further. All the regrets get more intense and vivid. Bang, bang, bang. There's a knock on the door. You wheel across in your wheelchair. It requires all your body's strength to open the door. As the door opens, an overwhelming golden glow appears. Staring back at you is a person you recognize. It's you, but the person you could have become. It's the version of you if your best self made all your decisions. They are 90 years old as well, but they look so much younger than you. With a massive smile on his face, your best self tells you stories of the fantastic life he lived, the risks they took, the magic moments, the memories with friends and family. Where you zigged, they zagged. Your envy is overwhelming. You do anything to go back in time. Rage kicks in. You ask your best self to shut up. You look over at the clock on the wall. It has 30 seconds left. You're about to die. Fear and regret intensify. The best version of yourself is about to leave the room. Before they go, they say, "I've got good news. I can send you back in time, but you have to promise me this. Write down an action you'll do today that involves your best self and an action to avoid your worst self. You shake hands, sign a contract, and promise to schedule it in your calendar. He opens the time machine. Wham! You're back in the present moment. You're the person that 90-year-old self was desperate to be. You have a clear list of actions and when you're going to do them today. Open your eyes and write down the agreement. The end. Part of the reason I wanted to read you that story today is because I knew showing up that I was going to know most of the people that are in the room. And when I look across this room, I am filled with hope because we have some supernovas of positive energy, thinking, strategy. You guys are so incredibly self-aware and thoughtful. And I know that if all of us leave this room today and we take the actions that our best self could do, we could take situations like the one that Grant was talking about and be excited to walk out of our front door on a daily basis. And I know that we can make that change, and I believe in all of you. So thank you so much for being here. If anyone has any feedback, I would love it so we can know how we're gonna change this from here on out. I love you guys very much. Jack, thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for having me. This was extravagant.
Tyler, thank you for being behind the TV and running all of this. And yeah, as I end every podcast with, I hope you all have a healthy and happy Saturday, and we'll see you next week for another episode on David's Saturday Night Sit Back. Bye, everyone.